Luka Dončić has always played with passion, intensity, and an unshakable drive to win. He wears his emotions on his sleeve, fights for every possession, and refuses to back down, even when it means going head-to-head with the officials. At first, it seemed like typical superstar frustration, a competitor demanding fairness in the heat of battle. But over the years, it's become something more. This isn't just about bad calls anymore. This is starting to feel personal. Even during his time with the Dallas Mavericks, Luka's intensity and willingness to speak up for himself and his teammates put him in frequent conflict with referees. He wasn't just complaining for the sake of it. He was fighting for fairness, consistency, and respect. One of Luka's biggest strengths as a leader is his willingness to stand up for his teammates. He's never been the type to let a bad call slide, especially when it affects his team's chances of winning. Luka always stands up for his teammates after a questionable call. In this moment, Luka didn't hesitate to challenge the officials after a teammate was hit with a foul he felt was undeserved. He approached the referee calm but firm, making his case without backing down. But standing up for his teammates wasn't always enough. Sometimes, he was the one on the receiving end of game-changing calls. As Luka's star power grew, so did the questionable calls against him. Suddenly, in crunch time, whistles were being blown at his expense, often in moments that could swing the outcome of a game. Here, Luka is penalized at a crucial point in the game, visibly frustrated as the referees make a decision that could cost his team a win. You can see him gesturing in disbelief, trying to understand how a routine play resulted in another call against him. Moments like these weren't just frustrating, they were a glimpse into the challenges Luka would face as his career progressed. And once he got to Los Angeles, things only got worse. Since joining the Lakers, Luka has been on the receiving end of some of the most baffling officiating decisions in the league. Bad foul calls? Check. Technical fouls for nothing? Check. Being completely ignored when he gets fouled over and over again. At this point, it's not just frustrating, it's a pattern. It's one thing to deal with questionable calls every now and then, but for Luka, it has become a nightly battle. For years, the NBA has had its fair share of controversies in the regular season and even in the playoffs until the finals. The league is built on marquee players, the ones fans pay to see, the ones who carry franchises, and the ones who dictate the game's biggest moments. But when it comes to Luka Dončić, it seems like those rules don't apply. He doesn't get the same whistle as other superstars. Instead, Luka is caught in a frustrating loop of soft fouls against him, blatant no calls when he's fouled, and technicals for the most ridiculous reasons imaginable. If you think he's just another superstar complaining, think again. Because when you look at the patterns, the clips, and the moments that have piled up over the years, it's impossible to ignore. Luka Dončić is officiated differently, and not in a good way. Every player picks up fouls. It's part of the game. Some are justified, some are questionable. And then some are so blatantly bad that they make you wonder if the officials are even watching the same game. For Luka Dončić, it's happening far too often. The way he gets whistled for minimal contact is downright laughable at times. Some of these calls wouldn't even happen in a pickup game at the local gym, and yet, in the NBA, Luka keeps getting penalized for nothing. And the worst part? It's always in key moments. Luka isn't known for being a physical defender. He's not a player who hand-checks aggressively or throws his body into opponents. But based on the calls he gets, you'd think he was playing 90s-style defense in an era where breathing on an opponent is enough for a whistle. Just watch this play of Luka getting called for a foul just for being close to Kyrie Irving. This is a textbook example of bad officiating. Kyrie Irving, one of the best ball handlers in NBA history, tries to create space against Luka. Luka barely touches him and the whistle blows immediately. What is Luka supposed to do? He was simply playing on defense, didn't reach in, didn't grab, didn't bump him off balance. Yet somehow, he still gets punished for just existing. It's not just a bad call, it's a game-altering one. Because when players like Kyrie Irving, Jalen Brunson, or James Harden are allowed to sell contact and bait refs into calling fouls, but Luka doesn't get the same benefit of the doubt, the game isn't being officiated evenly. Loses the ball off of Luka's great instincts and anticipation, and Luka still gets called for the foul. Luka is often in foul trouble for nothing. It's a pattern that's becoming impossible to ignore. If Luka so much as breathes on a defender, it's a foul. But when he's the one getting hit, suddenly the refs lose their whistle. Again, Luka gets hit versus the Mavericks, no call, then gets a technical for reacting. This is where the inconsistencies become unbearable. Luka drives, gets hit by surrounding defenders, gets zero whistle. Then, he reacts the way any player would, and instead of correcting the mistake, the refs double down and hit him with a tech. Make it make sense, this wasn't just a missed call, it was a missed call that turned into an even worse call. Luka takes clear contact. Nothing. Luka expresses his frustration. Technical foul. At this point, what is he supposed to do? He can't defend without getting called for soft fouls. He can't drive without getting hacked with no call. And he can't even react without being punished. It's not just frustrating, it's demoralizing. When a superstar of Luka's caliber is officiated this unfairly, it doesn't just hurt him, it hurts the game. Because fans don't want to see refs deciding games, they want to see the best players compete fairly. But with the way Luka is being officiated, you have to ask, are the refs trying to send him a message? Because if they are, Luka isn't backing down. Once again, clear contact, and nothing. Luka drives to the basket, takes a hit, and goes down hard. But the refs act like they didn't see a thing. Instead of blowing the whistle, they let play continue, forcing Luka's teammates to scramble back on defense. Because at this point, what else can he do? He gets up slowly, shaking his head, clearly trying to keep his composure. The frustration isn't just about this one play, it's about the countless times it has happened before. If this were Jason Tatum, James Harden, or SGA, they'd be at the free throw line already. What's he supposed to do? How is he supposed to adjust when the officiating is this unpredictable? These moments aren't just frustrating, they're game-changing. And at this point, it's impossible not to ask the question, is Luka being officiated fairly, or is there something bigger at play? Look at this. Luka gets called for one of the softest offensive fouls you'll ever see. Luka Dončić is a master at controlling the pace of the game. His footwork, body positioning, and balance allow him to get shots off without needing overwhelming speed or athleticism. He knows how to create space without pushing off, how to initiate contact legally, and how to maneuver through defenders with elite skill. So when he makes a clean offensive move, only to get whistled for an offensive foul, it's beyond frustrating. He makes a normal basketball move, gets his shot off cleanly, and somehow, the refs call him for an offensive foul. It's not just a bad call, it's another moment that completely shifts momentum. Instead of getting 2 free throws or another chance at a basket, Luka gets penalized for playing basketball. Instead of the defender getting called for initiating contact, Luka gets blamed for something that happens on nearly every possession. And you can see it all over his face because it's the same story, every game. Soft fouls against him, no fouls when he gets hit, technical fouls when he reacts. At this point, it's not just bad luck, it's a trend. The refs aren't just making mistakes here and there. It's starting to feel like Luka is being targeted. Here, Luka confronts the ref and he's clearly had enough. You can completely understand how he feels here. Luka tries to stay composed, but you can see it, he's done. He walks over to the ref, arms out, shaking his head, clearly looking for an explanation. How is this happening every single night? He's not screaming, throwing his arms wildly, or trying to show up the officials. He just wants to know why the calls are so inconsistent. And yet, instead of getting an answer, all he gets is more frustration. Because what can the refs really say? They can't explain why Luka gets hit and doesn't get the whistle. They can't justify why minimal contact on Luka results in a foul. So instead of owning up to the blatant inconsistencies, they just ignore it and move on. And for Luka, that's exactly the problem. For wiping sweat on the ball, let that sink in. Not for complaining, not for taunting, not for throwing the ball aggressively, for doing something completely normal, something every player can do in a game. At this point, what are we even doing? This isn't about controlling the game anymore. This is about Luka being held to a different standard than everyone else. Other players can argue, they can question calls, they can get emotional. Luka gets fouled and he argues he was in the act of shooting, which, to be fair, he absolutely was. Anybody with eyes could see that he had gathered and was shooting that. And then when he dares to react, he gets punished again. At some point, you have to wonder, do the refs just not want him to talk at all? If Luka so much as questions a call, he's immediately penalized. But watch any other superstar. LeBron can talk to refs, Draymond Green can yell directly in a referee's face, James Harden can throw his arms up after every single drive. They get warnings, they get longer leashes, they get treated like stars. Luka? The refs shut him down immediately. Luka gets pushed, and guess what? No call. In the ref's line of sight, someone get them some contact lenses, please. No whistle, no review, not even an acknowledgement from the refs. what makes it even more outrageous? A referee was standing right there, watching the entire thing unfold. He had a perfect angle, saw Luka shoved out of position, and yet did nothing. That wasn't just a foul. That should have been a flagrant. Or at the very least, a technical foul. Because when a player is hit that hard off the ball, the NBA's own rulebook states that it should be reviewed for unnecessary and excessive contact. So why wasn't it? If this had been LeBron, Steph, or Harden, the refs would have stopped the game immediately. The play would have been reviewed. The contact would have been assessed. The refs would have made sure a call was made. But for Luka, they acted like it didn't even happen. Meanwhile, if Luka even slightly bumps into an opponent, he's immediately called for a foul. Where's the consistency? How is it that a perennial MVP candidate can get shoved in plain sight, and the officials just look the other way? At this point, it's not just bad officiating, it's blatant. It's an entirely different set of rules being applied to Luka Dončić. And if the league isn't going to hold officials accountable, then Luka might have to start holding them accountable himself. Because one thing is for sure, he's not just going to take this quietly. Luka isn't just playing against other teams, he's battling the refs every single night. He gets called for soft fouls when defending. He never ever gets the same whistle when he's fouled. This isn't just about bad calls anymore. This is about how the game is being controlled. If this keeps happening, you have to ask, is Luka being officiated unfairly on purpose? For what reason? What did he ever do to them? Because the clips speak for themselves. And the NBA? They need to investigate this. Luka Dončić hasn't backed down. He keeps playing. He keeps pushing forward. But when he finally gets a foul call, most players just nod their heads or walk to the free throw line after getting a call, right in the face of the officials. Luka isn't mocking the opponent, he's mocking the refs. That reaction? It says everything. He knows what's been happening. The fans know what's been happening. And now even the refs have to acknowledge the inconsistency, because Luka just put a spotlight on it. And if he's at the point where he has to celebrate just for getting a normal whistle, then you know something is seriously wrong. Luka Dončić has never been one to shy away from the truth. When something isn't right, he speaks up. When his team needs him, he stands up. And when he feels like he's being treated unfairly, he lets everyone know. But lately, he started choosing his words carefully. Not because he doesn't want to speak his mind, but because he knows he doesn't have to. Luka has realized that sometimes silence speaks louder than words. By holding back, he's letting the evidence pile up for itself, making it impossible to ignore. No rant, no complaints, no direct shots at the officials, just a simple sentence that says everything it needs to. That pause, that smirk, the way he deliberately avoids saying too much, that's Luka sending a message without saying a word. He knows what's happening. The fans know what's happening. And the NBA, they know too. But Luka isn't the only one calling it out. NBA analysts are starting to take notice as well. Luka isn't alone in his frustration. Fans have been calling out the officiating all season. But now, even respected NBA analysts are starting to question how Luka is being treated. And when someone as vocal as Nick Wright speaks on it, you know it's getting out of hand. Nick Wright isn't just saying that Luka has a right to be frustrated. Players can get emotional. Players can argue calls. Players can plead their case. That's part of the game. But what happens when officials take things personally? What happens when refs start holding grudges? What happens when a superstar like Luka Dončić gets treated differently just because officials don't like him questioning them? That's not just unfair, it's unprofessional. Luka isn't just getting bad calls, he is being punished. It's one thing to get bad calls, it's another thing to not get calls. But Luka's situation? It feels like something else entirely. There are nights where it genuinely looks like refs are punishing Luka simply for existing. Do they have some hidden agenda against him? It doesn't make sense otherwise. How many times have we seen him get called for soft fouls on defense, take contact on offense with no whistle, get hit with technicals for nothing? It's not just an occasional mistake, it's a pattern. And the worst part? There's no accountability. Refs aren't explaining themselves. Refs aren't reviewing their mistakes. Refs aren't being held to the same standard as the players they officiate. Luka Dončić versus the referees isn't just an isolated incident, it's an ongoing battle. Missed calls, questionable technicals, blatant disrespect from officials. It's clear Luka is being treated differently than other superstars. The inconsistencies are impossible to ignore, and at this point, everyone sees what's happening. Fans see it. Analysts see it. Even Luka's opponents know it's happening. So the question now is, how long will this continue? Will Luka eventually get the respect he deserves? Or will he be forced to fight this battle for the rest of his career? Because the reality is, Luka isn't just dealing with bad calls, he's dealing with a league that refuses to officiate him fairly. The NBA has always been a league of superstars, players who dictate games, shape narratives, and define eras. And yet, when it comes to Luka Dončić, it feels like the league is making him fight twice as hard for everything he's earned. They aren't just letting the game decide who dominates, the refs are tilting the scales. But Luka isn't backing down. One thing is certain, Luka isn't going to stop fighting. Whether it's arguing for his teammates, standing up for himself, dominating in spite of the calls against him. Luka Dončić is proving that no amount of bad officiating can hold him back. They can try to frustrate him, they can try to silence him, they can throw every bad call in the book at him. But at the end of the day, Luka will still be Luka. And as the league watches, one thing becomes clear. It's not Luka versus the refs, it's Luka versus everyone who doubts him. And that's a fight he's going to win. Because no matter what the referees do, no matter how many whistles go against him, no matter how unfair the treatment is, Luka Dončić isn't stopping. And eventually, the NBA is going to have no choice but to respect him.